Ben Clemens joins us, one of our favorites. He, of course, writes baseball and analyzes baseball for Fangraphs, and it's always a pleasure to say hello. What's going on, Ben?
Not too much. What's up with you?
Doing all right. Waiting to see what the Cardinals might do. It's kind of fun to see them in the seller's mode, and I assume they're going to stay there, but maybe we can revisit that if they keep winning. What would you like to see them do? If they're going to stay in the seller's mode, what would you like to see them do?
So let's assume they don't go like 8-3 in the games before the deadline, while the Brewers kind of tail off. So let's just say kind of status quo. Looks like we're not making the playoffs. It's not dead, but I guess probably not happening. I would trade off. There's 4 guys I'm really thinking of as like, let's try to trade these guys, and one like might as well. So number 1, Jordan Montgomery. I would not trade Montgomery if the Cardinals are, I don't know, let's say 5 games back or less. If they're not going to compete, trade Montgomery. He's the highest value rental we have. Flaherty, same kind of deal. Look, I mean, it's not going to make the rest of the year fun to get rid of 2 starting pitchers from a below average rotation, but it's below average starting rotation, and they're going to be gone after this year. Unless you think you're extending Montgomery, I would do those 2. Jordan Hicks, same kind of deal. Like him, like the player a lot. I've been very invested in Jordan Hicks's career over his time as a Cardinal, but he's going to be a free agent, and so let's go get something for him. And I don't think this one's reasonable, but if he is off the IL and pitching well, I think they should be trying to trade Ryan Helsley, because we're in this weird year where there are not a lot of sellers. There are a lot of buyers who could use like a real hammer at the back of the bullpen, and you just can't bet on relievers staying good for a long time. So if someone's offering a lot for him right now, I would go take it. The Cardinals get hard-throwing arms pretty well. I feel okay about their ability to develop some new bullpen arms. I don't think it'll happen because Helsley is not pitching in the majors again yet. So it looks pretty unlikely. But if they can, I would do that too.
I agree with you for whatever it's worth. I really do. Relievers are volatile and they break down a lot. And Helsley's got some injury concerns throughout his career. So, no, it makes a lot of sense. Talking to Joe Sheehan, my friend, and some of the things he's written through the years, he believes like the trade market in general has kind of changed, really since maybe the 2016 deadline, and that teams who trade walk-year guys, even good ones, they can't expect this big, luxuriant return. But I do wonder, because you mentioned it, the shortage of sellers. I wonder if perhaps there is more valuable in those guys. There's more value, in those guys this year.
I think there's more value. Like, I don't think you're going to go getting a top 10 prospect from the Orioles or something for 3 months of Jack Flaherty. I think that ship has just sailed. Like, trades like that just don't happen anymore, for better or worse. But if you're saying, can we get a better prospect than we would have last year? Can we get more value than Harrison Bader back for Jordan Montgomery, even though we got him to pitch for us for a year? Yeah, I kind of think so. I think it sets up well, and I think that's why the Helsley trade is so interesting. He can offer something that these guys can't, which is you can say, hey, he'll be back next year. And look, I don't value that highly for relievers, but teams do. Teams value not having an easier time constructing their bullpen, and throwing him in as a kicker, or I guess it'd be more like throwing him in as a trade and then saying, as a kicker, you're trading us an up and down starting prospect. We'll just give you Jack Flaherty, and hey, now your rotation's better for this year. I think there's something to be done there.
Ben Clemens with us from Fangraphs, and as always, I encourage you. I got to get back to my screen here. Sorry about that. I encourage you to follow him on Twitter, please, at @_Ben_Clemens. And please seriously consider taking out a Fangraphs membership to keep that site thriving and pumping out even more content. I don't believe I could do my job writing baseball as much as I do, talking baseball as much as I do without the assistance of Fangraphs and being able to go there all the time. I think I'm going to just start looking up stats when I'm actually in bed. And at that point, my wife will tell me, why don't you go to the next room? Your infatuation with Fangraphs has just reached insane proportions. get out of here. Go sleep somewhere else. I'm probably not going to do that yet, but you never know. I'd love Fangraphs. Ben, I noticed, and you're doing your trade value rundown, which is always a fun read. It's great. It really is. And people should go to Fangraphs. It's free, by the way. Go to Fangraphs, and you can find it. And Ben does a countdown, and he lists players by blocks in terms of how he rates them. But you know me, I do Cardinals-centric questions. I was intrigued by your assessment of Lars Nootbaar. I don't disagree with it at all, but I learned a couple of things, and I do share your what is the phrase? Concerns, or I share your awareness that there are things that could be better and should be better. But rather than me, prattle on, why don't you take it away from here? Tell us what you think about Lars Nootbaar.
Yeah. So I'll just preface this by saying, if you set out to rank kind of the best contracts and values and players in baseball, there's some guys that are just obviously like top shelf. And that's dudes who play like superstars now, but are on cheap contracts. The Cardinals don't have any right now, but, think like peak Albert Pujols, like Jim Edmonds when he first came over. These guys who are just absolute studs and their contracts aren't quite at that level. So those guys, no question. In the Lars Nootbaar range, there's a lot of people where there's a lot of different things. Like, who would fetch more in a trade, Paul Goldschmidt or Lars Nootbaar? I honestly don't know. I think they're all kind of in a similar tier of like, Goldschmidt's going to make your team better, but for less time and for more money. Nootbaar is not as good. Like, I'm happy to say that. He's not as good of a hitter as Goldschmidt is today and not as good of a player, but he's going to be around for a while for cheap. Different teams value different things, and I kind of like to put a smattering of each type of player in the top 50 to say, like, hey, like this archetype's nice. Like, guys like this are valuable. I picked Nootbaar because I love Lars Nootbaar, but I think there's plenty of arguments that like a different Cardinal could, or a different outfielder on another team could be in that range. It's just useful to say, hey, this skill set is good. And what is that skill set? Well, we both love his patience. It's good. Like he has a good sense of the strike zone. We both like his power. He's capable of getting to it. And his defense, like pretty clearly good. So you got kind of that patience, power, defense. That's a really good core. Everything else is a question mark. Like, is he too passive at the plate? Yeah, he is. Like I'm sure he would tell you that too, that he takes too many pitches down the middle. Does he need to work on getting injured less? Like staying healthy? Yeah, like that's been kind of a big problem. Does he need to work on hitting fewer grounders? For sure. It's been a problem this year. And in that area of, hey, these guys are not the very best players in baseball, but they're good, above average players who are either cheap or very good, he fits right in. And basically, if he does all these things that I'm saying he needs to improve on, well, then he's a superstar and I have him too low. And he could fail, right? Like it could just be that the passivity ends up getting him and he just doesn't swing enough and pitchers just pipe fastballs until he has a bad batting line. So those are the risks, but the balance of that says, hey, like this is a high likelihood above average regular. There's upside to more there if he really taps into it. And what is that worth to teams for the next 4+ years? No, it's worth a lot. Like teams really like controllable regulars with upside.
Yeah, and are you surprised that because I share your enthusiasm for Newt, I really do. Are you surprised that his problem with hitting too many ground balls, which was there, it was there, entered into evidence during his minor league career? Are you surprised that it's still an issue? And maybe he hasn't been able to resolve that, or at least alleviate that in a significant way.
In some ways, yes, because it seems like one of his true best skills, and this is the thing that I always try to bet on, is that he's good at improving. You know, like if you look at the prospect report on him on draft day and then now, it's like, oh, these aren't the same players. Like he was supposed to have no power whatsoever. And I like betting on guys who improve things. And so I guess I'm a little surprised that he's not doing a better job of shoring up weaknesses, but man, Major League Baseball's hard. Like, the other pitchers, the other guys don't stand still and just let you change without trying to adjust back to you. It's tough. Like, I wish I had a more insightful thing to say than it's tough and baseball is hard. But, you know, the other guy lives in a big house, too. Like, I'd love to see him improve it, but the other team is trying as hard as they possibly can to not let him. And for now, they're getting the better. And that's the risk. Like, that's the kind of risk you take when you take these guys who aren't yet great, but seem like they're good at improving. They don't always do it.
Our guy, Ben Clemens, from Fangraphs is with us. And also on his trade value assessments, he has Jordan Walker. He's got him ranked pretty closely to Lars Nootbaar. And don't be alarmed by the rankings or anything. It's just, I like the way he lays it out, but I just like to read his opinions on each player rather than just like base my reaction on the ranking. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you get a lot of that. What do you mean he's number 43? You know, you even said in what you were about to say about what you did write about Jordan Walker. You even said, "Hey, whoa, hold up, Cardinals fans! Don't go getting out the pitchforks after looking at that Zips projection." You know, because Zip system by our mutual friend Dan Zimborski's, it's rather harsh when it comes to Walker, but it's because of the defense, right?
Yeah, so I talked with Dan about this one because it basically says he's not much better than a minor league scrub for the next 4 years. And I talked to a bunch of major league talent evaluators. No one on the Cardinals, I guess I can say that. But, people from around the game, and asked them about Jordan Walker, and none of them thought that. Everyone was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Jordan Walker, he's good. Basically, Zips takes existing defense and says, oh, it'll probably be a lot like that going forward, with some, push back towards average because, everything overreacts. And Jordan Walker's existing defense is the worst. He is one of the worst defenders in the last 15 years in the outfield, period. And we're talking, Marcelo Ozuna Spider-Manning off the wall 5 feet away from the ball. all these guys. You can picture them in your head. You're Randall Grichuk unable to throw and having to underhand the ball to Jason Hayward. That made Jason Hayward leave the Cardinals. I remember all these. I was around for him. Walker is much worse than those guys right now. It's really bad. And it's because he doesn't know how to play the outfield. He's barely played the outfield. He's fast. He just gets terrible reads, terrible jumps, doesn't take the right routes. And look, he's very young and he's learning a new position in the major leagues while he is kind of struggling to also hit. That's tough. But Zip says, oh, so this guy's the worst defender ever. I asked Dan, how much better would you like Walker if he were a DH? And the computer thinks he'd be 10 runs better every season, just DHing instead of being that bad in the outfield. I mean, that's just kind of fake, right? That's the limitation of computer systems. The Cardinals won't let him be that bad in the outfield for a long time. He'll play first base or DH. It just won't happen that way. So the projections are kind of fake in that sense. And one thing that everyone agrees is, and he's hitting too many grounders right now, and he's just so strong that it's a good batting line anyway. And those profiles everyone wants to bet on. Because if they don't start lifting the ball more, yeah, whatever. They still hit the ball really hard. And if they do, oh, man, it's like a bonanza.
Ben, I wanted to ask you about another Cardinals outfielder. Isn't that all we do is talk about Cardinals outfielders? It seems like it. It's been going on for quite a while. Your thoughts on Dylan Carlson, and I really do admit that I fluctuate all the time on him. I go back and forth, and I don't mind doing it because I actually don't like people who, they take a position in, say, 2018, and if things change dramatically by 2021, it's like they still won't change their position because it's some kind of weird manhood thing or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Let me interject here real quick.
Yeah.
I had a boss, guy I love, and he did one of these flip-flop things that really annoyed me. I think this was 2009. I was new on the job, and I was like, but you said, and he didn't even miss a beat. He just said, when the facts change, I change.
Perfect.
Yeah. Good enough for me. Go on.
That's exactly right. But Carlson kind of dodges my belief in that because I admit it. It's there are times I'm like, you know what? It's there. It's there. There's a lot of things he can do well, but then it's like, my goodness, is he ever going to hit right-handed pitching? And can he stay in the lineup? And just, I've reached to the point of exasperation, not in a hateful way, not at all, but I am exasperated by him, and I don't know where to go with my opinion anymore, because it goes everywhere, and I admit it. What about you? You're smarter than I am on these things, but what about you? And you're also more level-headed. So tell me what you think about DC.
More level-headed. I don't know. I'm not that level-headed. But I think I was just wrong. Like, I didn't see enough difference in watching him hit switch. And honestly, you need a lot of data points to actually say that a guy's going to be a bad switch hitter, like against one side or the other. It doesn't work that quickly. Now, that'll maybe change because StatCast is starting to figure out swing speed. And, like, Tommy Edman swings the bat 5 miles an hour faster from the right side than the left. So, like, okay,
wow.
he should probably swing from the right side. But we mostly don't have that data. And so I mostly just say, like, it'll be fine. Like, small sample size. And it just kept not doing that. I like betting on regressions, but that bet was wrong. Like, that bet was wrong. Dylan Carlson is not very good at hitting from the left side of the plate, and that saps a lot of his value. Like, the thing that you think, if you think this guy's a very valuable player, is, oh, he's a switch hitter, so there's no handedness issues, and he'll be like an above-average hitter, above-average outfielder. Great. Now, you suddenly make that a guy who's below average against 70% of pitchers, then the whole thing falls apart. If he absolutely crushed lefties, like more than he does now, then you're like, okay, he's a weak side platoon guy, but a really good weak side platoon guy. And so that has value, but I don't know, like, that's Tyler O'Neill kind of with more health, and I'm not wild about that as an awesome player. I think the real promise of Carlson was going to be that it didn't matter who you put out there against him. He was going to just be able to play every day, and you could take the fact that he wasn't a superstar because he was pretty clearly above average. Yeah, it's just not the case. And so much of his value in my mind, and I think in the industry's mind, is around the fact that you can just plug him in, that he was plug and play. And once he's not, it's a lot of work to do to get a pretty decent bat.
He's to me, and again, I'm keeping the focus on the Cardinals, but to me, he's in my mind, the way I'm looking at the trade deadline, he's one of the more curious questions. Do other teams want him? How much do they want him? Does he have a lot of value, okay value, not as much value as you think? I just don't know.
So my sense here, and this is, like, Carlson was not on this list, and so I didn't get any specific read on him from talking to people. But I have talked about Dylan Carlson with a lot of team people over the years because I'm constantly wondering, like, he's a player who I just really want to know about, and so I always ask. I think that the issue here is that the teams who want Carlson want to give him an extended tryout in doing various things, like he can be a plus center fielder, or maybe what if we can convince him to just bat righty, or hey, like, we're actually going to really try to work hard on his lefty swing and try to fix it up. But those teams aren't contending right now. Like, no contender would be like, yes, let's take this guy. We need him as our everyday starting outfielder. And that's what the Cardinals want to get back into. So I think you're going to have to find somebody in some front office somewhere who is like, yes, like, I've been in on this guy. I tried to draft him out of high school, couldn't get him, and, like, let's do it. Even though our team is not contending right now, lots of teams have done a good job of this, of finding guys who are interesting but not in a they work right now way. The Giants with Mike Yastrzemski, Lamont Wade, those kinds of pickups. I think Carlson would be like kind of a upscale luxury version of that, and I think the Cardinals wouldn't accept anything less than like an okay return, which makes me pessimistic that he's actually going to get traded. But yeah, he's a change of scenery guy for sure for me, and I kind of hope the Cardinals do it because I'd like to see him succeed. And the way it's set up here is just like it's not working right now.
Yeah, I could see a front office like the Giants, or they're the baseball operation. Yeah, I could see Carlson would be like perfect for them in the way they like to set things up. They'd have a platoon ready to roll, and he'd be in there against lefty pitchers, and No, you're right. And the two names that you brought up, perfect. He needs that kind of team to where he will have his defined role and he'll be really good at it. The problem is, you face right-handed pitching like 73% of your plate appearances, but I digress. Now, we've reached the point where we're coming to the inevitable but obligatory Tyler O'Neill question. He's in the lineup tonight. He's back. How long he'll stay, I don't know. I'll suspense all of my jaded comments and just defer to you, which is, what now? What next? Where do we go from here? Because I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, we're getting to Lucy with the football territory here, right?
Yeah, we are.
I'd love it if he can do what we know peak Tyler O'Neill can do. I think that he's answered the question of whether his very best form is a good major league hitter. Yeah, it is. Like, when he's on and when everything's right and when he's seeing the strike zone well, he's really good. I think that was kind of always the promise of O'Neill, right? Is, man, if this guy ever figures it out, it's going to be like massive. And yeah, that works. But I think at this point, I'm pretty confident that he's not really capable of keeping it together for extended strings of time. And yeah, that's fine. That doesn't mean you can't play that player. Joey Gallo is a similar player, more heralded, but very similar. And he's been useful a lot of his major league career. I think there's plenty of ways to make the O'Neill type profile work, but I think he's miscast as like a all-star level everyday outfielder, which is kind of what the Cardinals were selling for a while there with him. It's just the ship has sailed. Like, he's not consistent enough. He's not healthy enough. He can't do everything all at once. He may have the tools, but look, flashing the tools all is fine, but you got to show all the tools together for an extended period of time to be like a really good major league player these days. It's tough. Everybody's really good, and I just don't think the consistency is there.
I got to follow up on that because I'm as you know, because we've been doing these conversations for a few years, and I'm grateful to you for that. I'm tormented by O'Neill, like perpetually tormented. I do wonder about this. He'll be in his walk year next season. Boris is his agent. I hate to be so damn cynical, but if there's such thing as the best version of Tyler O'Neill, I think we'll come close to seeing that, or at least I think the chances are better that we would see that next season. Rather than sort of give him away, for lack of a better term, at this deadline, or maybe even in the off season when maybe you get a better deal, but it's not anything that excites you. Do you think the Cardinals should consider having that one last dance with him, hoping that the walk year thing will kick in?
So, in the abstract, yes. Like, I think that makes a lot of sense, that you should bet on a bounce back. The guy's had like a 5-win season. He's capable of being really good. And yeah, if you're just going to be giving him away, maybe you want to kind of not do that. It comes down to me to a roster crunch issue, and the Cardinals need to decide what they're doing with the outfield, but also the DH spot. It's kind of crowded, despite no one really knocking the cover off the ball. I can't imagine going into next year with Carlson and O'Neill and not trading anyone else. Like, okay, let's say that you get rid of Paul DeYoung, and so I don't think his option's going to get picked up. And so you've got like an Edman, Donovan, Gorman kind of middle infield plus DH sometimes. Well, then you also have Nootbaar and Carlson and O'Neill and Walker, and that's too many. And who's your fourth outfielder then? Is it Carlson? Like, it feels like you're leaving value on the table. Maybe it's Carlson, but that doesn't leave any space for anyone else to come up, and that would require the Cardinals to fall out of love with Alec Burleson, which seems unlikely.
Right.
And it's just like it's a tough puzzle to manage without subtracting a piece.
Right.
None of the pieces, and that's with DeYoung. Even with DeYoung leaving, which, again, like, maybe he signs a cheaper deal with the Cardinals, but I don't think that's very likely, and I don't think there's a lot of trade interest in him, because it seems like a lot of his magic is that the Cardinals really understand where he should stand in a way that other teams might not. Like, you look at him and you're like, this guy's like a 30 defender on the 20-80 scale, and then he makes plays and you're like, well, I guess he's a 60. Like, I don't understand how that's possible, but I don't think any team's going to say this guy's an above-average defender, so it'll be hard to trade. I think they need to move someone in the outfield. I think it'll be one of O'Neill or Carlson. I think, like you said, because they don't want to give O'Neill away for nothing, it'll probably be Carlson for next to nothing. This is what happens, I think, when you get a bunch of above-average guys.
Yeah, and I want to circle back just for a minute and talk about Alec Burleson. The Cardinals, as you alluded to, they really like him a lot. I mean, they like him a lot, and Cardinals fans, at least the ones that I hear from, they're not as patient. I get that. I get that, but I think all the telltale signs are actually really positive. I think he's going to be a really good major league hitter. So this kind of adds to your point. We have to account for Burleson because they're not going to move him aside. They're not going to get rid of him. They really, really like him for his contact skills. And,
once you count him into the picture, it's really jammed.
I know. So that's why an outfielder's got to go. And I know probably some people listening, they think you and I are overrating Burleson. I don't think we are. And we're not saying that he's a star caliber outfielder right now, but he just has an idea about hitting, and everything he's done is hit. And I think the results are, I don't know if I'd call them inevitable, but they're pretty likely. So
allow me to differentiate from you slightly here.
Okay.
I think the Cardinals overrate Burleson.
You do?
I think he's fine.
Yeah.
I do. I think he's fine. He's like an above average bat, below average glove. And the result is an okay player. Nice. When your system churns these guys out with third round picks, awesome. Fourth outfielder, back at first baseman if he can handle it, cool. But I think he's a little miscast as a guy who's going to get 400, 500 plate appearances. I just need to see more, particularly when it's squeezing really good players playing times. Whenever Alec Burleson is playing and that means Jordan Walker doesn't play, something's gone wrong. Whenever he's playing and so Lars Nootbaar isn't playing, something's gone wrong. And if I were the Cardinals, I would say, dang, this guy didn't really destroy AAA for that long. And he definitely has not hit yet in the majors, even though, like you said, the skills are there. What if we just gave him a few hundred plate appearances at AAA to see if he can really get moving again? I don't know. They're not going to. It seems pretty clear that they believe their view of him is basically yours. It's higher than mine. And so I think you just have to accept that reality. I'm lower than the Cardinals on Burleson. But yeah, I hope that if he keeps playing, it's because he's better, not because he's performing at this level.
So I'll clarify. Bernie Miklasz overrates Alec Burleson. Ben Clemens does not. But he also is not. He is not a Burleson hater either. So fair enough all the way around. Fair enough all the way around. I'm keeping you a long time, so I apologize. If you want to scram, just say the word. I'm certainly not offended, but I got one more for you if that's okay. Jordan Montgomery, listen, I've been so impressed with him. I also think maybe I'm a little carried away because I'm kind of reacting to recent events, and he's been on such a good stretch. And I think maybe I'll say this. I think he's a better pitcher than I thought he was at the time they acquired him. And so I don't know what to think because part of me says, listen, man, you need to try to, get him signed because he's proven to be a pretty reliable, consistently good pitcher. On the other hand, they probably would, I hate to use the word overpay, but they'd probably have to pay more. They'd have to pay way outside of their comfort zone if Scott Boras is representing him. So it's a perplexing situation because they say, well, we really need pitching. That's our focus. Well, you got one guy that you really like and has done a hell of a job for you. So how do you get better if he walks away unless his presence as a trade piece can actually get you a starter that you like, that you can plug in now. But are you a little surprised that at least they haven't entertained the idea, making a vigorous attempt to extend his contract?
Yes, and I'm hoping that that's because they have and just haven't told us. Yeah, I find it very strange that there's one starter on the Cardinals who's been any good in the last 2 years, I mean, Miklasz has been fine. That's harsher than I mean to be. But the guy who's been very clearly the best of them is wearing a Cardinals uniform right now. He's pitching as well as he ever has, and they're trying to figure out next year, and he's not like the number one option. Now, it's entirely possible that he is, and Scott Boras told him to kick rocks and like, hey, my guy's going to free agency, so like we'll see you then. But that happens. Like, but Boras clients definitely do that, and it's possible that the Cardinals just aren't airing their dirty laundry. But if they're saying like we don't really want to keep Montgomery, I think that's bad process. I really hope that they've found out either, hey, he can't be extended, or like, hey, it's Zach Wheeler money, and like we don't think he's that good. Look, like there are pitchers to be found in free agency. Zach Wheeler's contract ended up being a pretty good deal because he's so good. I just think he's better than Montgomery. The Cardinals don't go get pitchers in free agency, so I'm kind of down on whether they would pay up to retain Montgomery, even if it weren't a deal that's too big, even if it were fair value or a little under. That's not really a thing they've done, is go out and get free agent pitchers. They seem to be great at being in second place or getting kind of the lower tier option, and Steven Matz, as it were. I would be trying really hard to keep him, just like you.
Yeah, I've just been impressed with him. And listen, I know some of this is lip service, but I do believe that he would like to stay. I don't think he's lying about that. He was pretty passionate about that in spring training before he, in effect, cut off conversations about it. And John Denton, who does a good job covering the Cardinals for MLB.com, really has a good relationship with Montgomery. And Montgomery was telling him, I think fairly recently, it's like, me and my wife really love it here. And, she started a dermatology business in New York, and, she was doing really well. But she moved her dermatology business here to St. Louis and has set up a practice here, and she really loves it. And I'm kind of a sap for that kind of stuff, so you can factor that into what I'm saying. But I think the opportunity still is there, but it's also Boras, and it's also he's going to go to max out. He's not interested in any kind of stay with the team discount. I just don't see that happening. But it's a shame because I really do believe the guy wants to be here. Now, a cynic would say, well, then he should take less money. Okay, I get it. But you don't hire Scott Boras as your agent if you're willing to do that. So maybe Jordan is trying to have it both ways as well. I don't know. That would hardly be anything new.
I'm with you. Like, it's a situation where you can understand, like, his motivations and also understand the Cardinals' motivations, and you can think both sides are fine and they still don't get to a solution. I hope that doesn't happen. But, yeah, I really hope he stays. There's a number where if I were the Cardinals, I would not want to keep him. And I hope that they go right up to that number and don't accept no for an answer until he's there.
Ben Clemens of Fangraphs, I kept you. I think this may have been our record. You've been on for more than a half an hour, and I know that our listeners love it. But I'm sorry if I took advantage of your kindness, and so I'm sure the next time producer Dave Solomon reaches out to you, I wouldn't blame you if you just disregarded the message. So, but no, thank you for a good. Oh, I don't know. We're going on 35 minutes plus. So we covered a lot of ground. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Good talking to you, Bernie.
All right. That's our good friend, Ben Clemens. Became a fan of his when he was at Viva Alberto's. I thought he was really, really sharp. I thought he was really, really good. I learned from him and still do. And I love to talk ball with Ben.